From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We start in Paraguay, where the ruling Colorado Party has won the presidential election, with over 96% of the ballots counted. The results point towards another 5 years of conservative and neoliberal policies. Mario Abdo Benitez, a 46-year-old former senator, took 46.7% of the vote, according to the country's elections tribunal. His main rival, Efraín Alegre, a lawyer from the center-left Ganar coalition, was just 4 points behind, with 42.6%. It was the closest result in a presidential election since the end of the dictatorship 29 years ago.
We will honor the trust of the people of Paraguay. We will work with honesty, with integrity, and with sacrifice to give it our all. Today the divisions in Paraguay have ended. Today the debate ends. The people have decided. Tomorrow arises a Paraguay that is united. I will dedicate myself to uniting the Republic of Paraguay.
So let's look at Paraguay's Colorado Party. It was set up by dictator Alfredo Stroessner and was the country's ruling party from 1947 to 2008. The new president, Abdo Benitez, is the son of Stroessner's right-hand man. He studied in the United States and was an officer in the Air Force. He inherited the fortune from his father. Corruption and security were the main focus at the first presidential debate in Mexico. According to surveys, Andrés Manuel López Obrador is 20 points ahead of his nearest challenger, Ricardo Anaya. Anaya and José Antonio Meade are battling each other for the second position, while the two independent candidates, Margarita Zavala and Jaime Rodríguez, have less than 10%. During the debate, Anaya proposed giving better training to the police to enhance security, while Meade vowed to take a tough stand on criminals. López Obrador said Mexico's main problem is corruption and that he wants to fight the causes of violence in the country. Mexico is holding its presidential election on July 1st.
To formalize and certify all police is something very important. To continue to have the support of the Army and Marines until we have police that are reliable and who are on the side of the people.
The objective of my government is to defend Mexicans, to defend you from the corrupt, to defend you from criminals, to defend you from U.S. President Donald Trump, and to defend you from the abusive political parties.
A great part of national security is not to create populist policies.
How are you, López Obrador, going to explain to families that you want to sit down with these criminals and hold dialogue with your ambition for power and your fear of losing again? You have become a puppet for criminals. I will put them in jail.
It has been claimed that I want to release all criminals from prison that have committed a crime. What I consider is that we have to tackle the regions, the causes of violence. Corruption is Mexico's main problem. Nothing has hurt the country more than the dishonesty of those governing.
The run-up to the Mexican election has been plagued by a series of political assassinations. At least 82 candidates and office holders have been killed since the electoral season began in September. Violence has been especially bad at the southwestern Mexican state of Guerrero, where at least 8 candidates for local office have been killed in the past 6 months. The electoral campaign in Venezuela for the presidential elections on May 20th has officially started with a launch on social media.
Tuitazo, or the Twitter campaign in support of Nicolás Maduro, was launched at 6 o'clock in the morning, local time in Venezuela. The hashtags became the most popular Twitter trend in the country, with online messages of support like these. And on the ground in the streets of Caracas, the president's campaign began to disperse throughout the city in support of his candidacy.
Why support Nicolás Maduro? Because Nicolás Maduro is synonymous with defense, synonymous with protection, with work. with hope. He has come to represent the hope of the Venezuelan people.
We are the hope, we are the future of Venezuela, and above all, we are the majority. That is the motto with which so many people have been out in the streets today in different neighborhoods of the capital, supporting the electoral campaign of President Nicolás Maduro. They also paint murals like this. They will make more than 5,500, which will be discarded all over the capital. Along with the murals, sports and cultural activities have been organized in all neighborhoods in the capital.
There has never been a president in this country apart from Chavez who started this revolution to take care of the people the way Nicolás Maduro does. I think that there is not a country in the world where there is a special care for ordinary households, for single mothers, for pregnant women, for the disabled. Today we can say that 100% of older adults have their pension, which is from Social Security.
The election campaign will last until May 17th. Beginning today, the candidates will have airtime on TV and radio, as laid out by the National Electoral Council.
What we are seeing here is being replicated in the 22 parishes of Caracas and in all the municipalities of the country. It is the start of our campaign for the people president. It is the people who will carry the voice of President Nicolás Maduro.
Nicolás Maduro will officially begin his campaign on Monday in Puerto Ordaz. Opposition candidates Henry Falcón and Javier Bertucci are also gearing up for the election. Bertucci started this Sunday in the state of Yaracuy, and Henry Falcón began in the island of Margarita with fishermen and traders.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Uruguayan Foreign Affairs Minister Rodolfo Nin Novoa has said that Uruguay does not plan to leave the Union of South American Nations, the UNASUR, adding that he regrets the decision of 6 countries to announce their withdrawal from the organization. On Friday, the foreign ministers of Chile, Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay said they were temporarily suspending their membership, saying that the organization was leaderless. UNASUR has been without a Secretary General since early 2017. Bolivia's Foreign Minister Fernando Guanacuni said that he will call an extraordinary meeting of UNASUR foreign ministers to review the situation. He also stressed that the 6 mentioned countries are not leaving the Union. The Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega has withdrawn a reform of the Social Security system. The proposal faced 5 days of violent protest and led to over 20 deaths. Ortega called for unity and peace following this violence. Speaking at a press conference, he offered condolences to the victims' families.
I have just approved with the Board of Directors of Social Security that we are revoking and canceling the reforms. We are putting them to one side, because it was the reforms that caused this whole situation to begin. We have to restore order. We cannot allow this chaos and crime to continue. We cannot permit it, and we will do everything we can within the law and the Constitution to ensure that peace and stability is restored.
The president also invited the Catholic Church to participate in the dialogue as guarantor of peace. Ortega called for dialogue on the reforms of Social Security laws and taxes, among other issues. He also called on Nicaraguans to stop any act of violence. In Chile, social groups have protested against a private pension scheme known as the AFP. The demonstrators are calling for an end to the management of pensions by private financial institutions. They are demanding the private companies to be replaced by a public pension system.
It's been more than a year and a half since we came out of the streets screaming no more AFP and asking for improvements to our pension for our compatriots. Despite this, our demands have been dismissed by the authorities. Nothing has changed and nothing will change unless we mobilize.
The situation we are in today is frankly intolerable. It is an insult to the workers who have dedicated their whole lives to their jobs. They have been in regular employment but can't afford the cost of living.
We have been too tolerant of this system for too long. I reject the individualistic capitalist system which only benefits the wealthy. We insist that a public pension system that will benefit the workers must be created.
The government says that AFP is very good because it is business. But we don't have high expectations of it. For us, the only alternative is organizing. Through our struggle, through our street protest, we are going to continue to make this demand. We are going to change this model of privatization that will only create greater injustice.
Argentina protested yet another electricity rate hike proposed by President Mauricio Macri's administration. This is one of several utility increases over the past 2 years. People around the country demonstrated against the measure by shutting down their lights for an hour. Protesters also took to the streets holding candles. The government raised energy taxes by 45% in December. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro was in Cuba over the weekend to meet President Miguel Díaz-Canel. It is the first official visit to Cuba by an international leader following the election of the new president. Maduro was there to congratulate the newly elected president, and he will hold official talks and strengthen bilateral cooperation between the sister nations. The Venezuelan delegation includes the Minister of Education, Elías Jagua, and Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza. Both held meetings with their Cuban counterparts.
Today we are here to renew hope, to renew dreams, and to define our future, to visualize 10 years going forward. What more can be done for our people? And when I say our people, I mean the Cuban people, the Venezuelan people, but I also am speaking about our America, about America Latina, the Caribbean. What more must be done to create a deep and indestructible foundation for the political, spiritual, moral, and above all, the economic union? As that is what is going to cement a true liberation. The independence and liberation of the 21st century will depend on us building a powerful union and an economic union.
And following the election of the Cuban new leaders, our correspondent Laura Prada asked people in Havana how they feel about the future.
Isel Filiu is a sports journalist in Cuba. She's the woman who President Raúl Castro referred to during his closing speech at the National Assembly of Popular Power.
I think the speech of General Raúl Castro Ruz was really memorable, and it inspired me and others to build a better and strong Cuban society.
A few hours after the new president's election, on the streets of Havana, Cubans showed their trust in the new president and their optimism for the future.
It's a historical continuity. Díaz-Canel has been elected by the Cuban people from the grassroots, by the people who voted in the election.
Díaz-Canel will take over from Raúl Castro as an experienced revolutionary fighter.
Assembly members who witnessed this historic day are committed to fulfilling the mandate of the people. Here's what Cuban Assembly members have to say.
Díaz-Canel's speech was really promising. Like he said, his main goal will be to continue the work of the revolution. And all the Assembly members and the people of Cuba will support that goal.
Having highlighted the extraordinary work of the government of Raúl, we can only thank him and wish him well. As Díaz-Canel said, to continue with good energy as today's leader of the Cuban Revolution. I believe that it was a beautiful speech. I think that we are all not just excited, but pleased at the same time.
Havana looks calm and peaceful following the election of Miguel Díaz-Canel to the presidency, and this calm will be followed by visits from heads of state and Cuba's many friends.
Residents of a remote village in the Peruvian Amazon have lynched a Canadian man accused of killing Olivia Arevalo. She was an 81-year-old traditional healer who was shot twice in the head last Thursday. Some villagers blamed Arevalo's murder on Sebastián Paul Woodruff, who was believed to have been one of her clients. Police found Woodruff's body buried about 1 kilometer from Arevalo's home, after a video recording of the lynching on Friday was shared on social media. Nicaragua is hosting the 2018 Central American Theater Expo, an event that promotes theater in the country.
The Arts Festival includes theater groups from Spain and Central America, and aims to encourage the participation of young people.
We want to promote participation of young people in theater here in our country. We are focusing on them because there is a very important student theater movement.
The Maduixa company from Valencia, Spain, particularly stands because all of its performers are women, and they perform a unique dance show on stilts.
The stilts represent repression because we are not free dancers when we are wearing them. The stilts encourage people to think about how our freedom is limited, which is a major theme of the play.
Activities like this theater festival stimulate cultural growth in the country.
We should develop theater as a culture within our country. We can learn so much from the theater, because theater is a living art form. Theater speaks to us through words, images, and colors.
There are 13 theater groups in this year's Central American Theater Festival, and there are workshops for theater fans given by experienced theater professionals. The goal is to promote theater as an art form in Nicaragua.
We'll take another short break, but join us after another look at what our multimedia colleagues report.
Have some respect for the enormous contribution to the economy of this country that's been made by people who migrate here. Had there not been migration from the Caribbean, from South Asia, from Ireland into this country over the past 50 years or so, what kind of health service would we have? What kind of education system would we have? What kind of industrial base would we have? What kind of society would we be? What would London have been the multicultural capital of the world hosting the Olympics? I think not. I think we would be a much poorer, much less relevant society and relevant country. We need to think about the contribution that's been made and respect people for that contribution that's been made. Now tonight I shall be joining my colleagues in voting against this bill, partly because of the details within the bill on education, on housing, some of the aspects of health and many other details of the bill, but also because of the atmosphere and the message that it sends at this particular time. Let us start from a sense of humanity. Every case is a human story. Every human story has its ups and downs, has its triumphs, has its tragedies. But instead, we have this dog whistle politics of the mantra that every immigrant is an illegal immigrant, every immigrant must somehow or other be condemned, and immigration is the cause of all the problems that we have in our society. A shortage of housing can be dealt with by building houses. It kind of helps. The two things go together. Recognising the skills of people and their ability to contribute to our society helps us all. But if we descend into this UKIP-generated, xenophobic campaign, it weakens us all, it demeans us all as a society, and we're all the losers for that.
Welcome back. The French President Emmanuel Macron is to meet US President Donald Trump at the start of his 3-day visit to the United States. Before leaving for Washington, Macron urged Trump to stick to the Iran nuclear deal. In an interview with Fox News, he said that if the deal falls apart, Iran's nuclear program may become a problem like that in North Korea. In 2017, Trump imposed stricter sanctions on Iran and called the nuclear agreement the worst deal ever. The two leaders are also expected to discuss the situation in Syria. Macron will try to convince Trump on climate change policies and free trade.
So my point is to say, even after the end of the war against ISIS, the US, France, our allies, all the countries of the region, even Russia and Turkey, will have a very important role to play in order to create this new Syria and ensure Syrian people to decide for the future.
Meanwhile, anti-fascists clashed with police near the Franco-Italian border as they escorted around 30 migrants from one country to the other. Demonstrators broke through a police blockade and continued towards a migrant shelter in the French commune of Briançon. The protest was in response to the construction of a fence by the right-wing Generation Identitaire movement the day before. Right-wing activists built the barrier on the French-Italian border in a bid to block migrants from reaching France. Germany's Social Democrat Party, the SPD, has elected a woman as its leader for the first time in its 154 years of history. Andrea Nahles, a former labor ministry from the left of the party, was elected at a special conference in Wiesbaden with just 66% of the vote. Some attributed this low vote to her support for the SPD entering a grand coalition with Chancellor Angela Merkel. In her acceptance speech, she said she wanted Germany to be on better terms with Russia and called for more solidarity within a market economy. The British Home Secretary Amber Rudd is facing calls for her resignation after the government made an embarrassing U-turn on its treatment of 60,000 people of Caribbean origin, known as the Windrush generation. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, reports on Britain's latest immigration crisis.
British Prime Minister Theresa May and her government have come in for scathing criticism following revelations that close to 60,000 people from Caribbean countries who came to the UK after the Second World War at the invitation of the British government, the so-called Windrush generation, could now be deported. In Brixton, one of the centres of the Caribbean community in London, emotions are running high.
Well, I think personally, as usual, the government, as far as the Caribbean people are concerned, have handled it wrong yet again. I seriously believe that, I've heard of some people who've been living in this country for over 50 years, and now it turns out that they're not even British citizens.
The Windrush deportation crisis centres on the fact that children travelling to the UK from the Caribbean on their parents' passports were never formally naturalised, and many moved to the UK before the countries in which they were born became independent. so they assumed they were British. They now face a risk of deportation if they never formalise their residency status and do not have the required documentation to prove it.
All of this is a direct consequence of the actions taken by Theresa May when, as Home Secretary in 2013, policies were implemented to, in her own words, create a hostile environment for immigrants in this country. We saw go-home vans, bonuses for immigration officers for knocking back asylum seekers, and a whole range of policies across departments to deny access to services, housing, etc. for immigrants in this country.
With many Caribbean leaders in London this week for a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, on Tuesday Theresa May apologised directly to them over the Windrush deportation crisis. Yet back in Brixton, it is hard to escape the feeling that the May government is targeting the Caribbean community.
From what I understand of it, all I can say is that it's absolutely disgusting. I don't know where they get off. I have no idea where they get off. It's like they take and take and take, you know, from the black people, and then there's no give. You know what I mean? And then if they give any little small thing, they take it back all the time. That's history just shows you that. You just check the record, and that's all you see.
There have been calls for Theresa May to resign, not only by Labour members of Parliament, but also by Santina Bristol, whose son, a Windrush citizen, died last month after being classified as an illegal immigrant and sacked for not having a passport. Bristol believes the stress caused by her son's immigration problems was responsible for his death. With emotions running high, both amongst the Caribbean community and wider society, the government is now scrambling to contain the crisis. Pablo Navarrete, Telesur, London.
And this leads us to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.